Hey, Bastish B here for 64K and welcome to another episode of Modern Vintage. So what's this show about? I take a look at modern retro inspired games on modern systems, and we also take a look at the possible inspiration game behind it. And today's games are... So let's first check out the possible inspiration game.
Castlevania was originally released in 1987 on the NES by Konami. Konami at the time were primarily known as an arcade developer, but over the previous few years they were pumping out quality conversions of their most beloved arcade games for various computers and consoles. Castlevania, or Akumajo Dracula in Japan, was a side-scrolling action platform adventure game, putting you in the shoes of vampire hunter Simon Belmont, whose family lineage has to kill Dracula every 100 years as he's resurrected and is out for blood. Gameplay involves exploring Dracula's vast castle made up of 6 stages with the obligatory bosses, weapons upgrades and sub-weapons at your disposal as you take care of all the demons and monsters in Dracula's castle before fighting the fiend himself. Your whip is your primary weapon, with other cool additions like daggers, swords, axes, etc, as well as sub-weapons such as boomerangs, stopwatches and many more. But be aware that using your sub-weapons costs health, so use it sparingly. The game had good graphics for the time and a very memorable soundtrack, and ended up spanning an entire franchise for Konami over the years, with everything from arcade to Super NES, PSP and C64 versions, which continues on to this day. The game is also included in the upcoming Konami Castlevania Anniversary Collection, so that'll be a good way to check it out on all modern systems if you've never had the opportunity. And you're probably thinking, isn't our next game more influenced by Castlevania 3, with it borrowing some really important gameplay mechanics like the multiple characters, etc? And yes, that is true, but without the original, none of them would exist in their current form. So I say definitely check out the original in all its 1987 glory, because it's the original inspiration.
Okay, now let's check out the new game.
Bloodstained Curse of the Moon was released in 2018 by Inti Creates and is a prequel to the Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which was a very successful Kickstarter, where the Curse of the Moon, this game, the prequel, was promised as part of a stretch goal, giving players something to sink their teeth into until the main course. Inti Creates is a Japanese company formed in 1996 from ex-Capcom staff members, and they have their offices in Chiba, Japan. They were tasked with making this 8-bit Castlevania-inspired prequel due to their excellent track record with this style of game, which includes the Mega Man Zero series on the Game Boy Advance and Azure Striker Gunvolt on the 3DS, to name a couple. The plot to this prequel involves you as Zangetsu, the sword-wielding demon hunter who is out for revenge. So the basic plot for any Charles Bronson movie. As you can see, the game looks like a classic 80s NES game, or more particularly, Castlevania. They did a really excellent job capturing that style, and the sound effects are spot on NES with some very cool chiptune music as well. Gameplay follows the same path as Castlevania, with its side-scrolling action, finding secrets, upgrading weapons and fighting bosses. The biggest difference gameplay-wise is in its use of Castlevania 3's multi-character system. For example, throughout the game, new characters are joining your party. Including yourself, there are 4 characters to choose from, each with their own skills which you'll need to switch between to solve basic puzzles, or some of them are even more adept at fighting different bosses. Zangetsu has a sword and is fast. Miriam has a whip for distance. Alfred is a magician and has projectile magic, and Gebel is a vampire who can transform into a bat and fly to new areas. So all these skills are used effectively to aid you in your quest. This game isn't too long, but just the right length to be satisfying in my opinion, as is the difficulty, which is challenging boss wise but pretty easy in game, so you never really become too frustrated. The fact that Inti Creates made this entire game in 6 months is quite amazing, and I'm very impressed with this game overall. It's available on all modern systems, but I played it on the Switch just because of the portability and being able to play it anywhere. I think the game successfully achieves its goal of not only hyping you up for the full Bloodstained game, but just as a standalone homage to Castlevania, it's brilliant in all its 8-bit glory.
Okay, so where can you find Bloodstained? Currently, Bloodstained is available on literally every single modern home format you can possibly think of, so you shouldn't have any problem finding it. As far as the original Castlevania, it's an NES classic, it's available on cartridge, it's pretty easy to find, it's not too expensive at this point. The game is also available on the NES Mini and a lot of other compilations. And thanks for joining me, Bastish B at 64K. I hope you had a good time. If you can like and subscribe, that'll be greatly appreciated, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.